I'd now like to invite Mr. Shymak Tata, Chairman Deloitte India, to speak about stewardship, Deloitte perspective.
Good morning to our esteemed panel on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for allowing me to share some perspectives. And in this process, what I will do is to take you away from some of the specific words that we hear Mahendra always talk about, governance, sustainability, etc., but put things in a larger context that will enable us to understand what we need to do today. Through this process, I think one of my objectives is to focus us on the larger real reason for why companies exist. And if we can get to that, a lot of it will follow. Beyond profit, much heard about now, but started a long time ago. We heard Jamshedji Tata speak about the cause of existence. We heard Indra Nui speak about purpose, answers critical questions of who we are and why we exist. And I will, throughout the next few minutes, pick on my experiences as I am part of Deloitte. And Puneet Ranjan, who was the global CEO, spoke about that the blind pursuit of profit at all costs is not a tenable proposition. And essential to make money, fundamentally saying that the outcomes of what we do is reflected in some of those financial numbers, but we need to be cautious of the result of the outcome of how we do it. And that is what is the essence of what is beyond purpose, beyond profit. In this context, it was important for me to be able to put things in some sort of order, to be able to focus on what, in one level, boards should be looking at another level, where larger corporates and individuals who work should be looking at, management should be looking at, societal stakeholders should be looking at, including governance, government, and others. And although you might be able to look at these four pillars which exist of all in innovation, trust, and value as core things that we have attributed as always actions that we expect to see, putting them with a fundamental overarching need to focus all of these on purpose is what today drives all stakeholders, boards, committees, and management to look at things differently. In that context, certainly the passion, the commitment to be able to do it from within rather than tick the box is also an important criteria. I will, through these next few minutes, focus on some of it which is new, throw a slightly different perspective of what has always been considered as appropriate, and then leave it for Mahendra Chavan and an august set of panelists and speakers to probably debate and discuss more. This effectively is the central core of what I want to talk, and that is purpose. Is purpose making profits? It was the CEO's aim a few decades ago. It was the only aim. The only aim was to reward stakeholders and people who had put in money so that that money could be given back to those who had invested and create wealth. In today's environment, as we see it go, we see a very different purpose now. About a month ago, we had about 200 CEOs of corporate America sign commitment. This commitment was not a purpose of the organization itself, but it was a wider commitment as minimum areas where they believed that they needed to focus on. It had 5 elements to it. The first was on driving value to customer. Price out, value in covers behaviors which are probably not in line with what everybody follows, and therefore it was a commitment. The second one was an investment in employees, covering the aspiration that all purpose must work towards ensuring that the people who work to help that purpose go are sufficiently invested in. The third was to create an ethical ground around the supplier environment, which is another key stakeholder in business as we see it. Fourth was the overarching principle of having to look at society at large. And finally, and not really the last, but yet finally, was the long-term shareholder view. So remove from short-term, myopic, and also the last. Now these are the 5 things that 200 CEOs signed up in, fundamentally in 2 tranches. If you look at, therefore, some of the headlines that came out were that stakeholders were not, or shareholders only were not the stakeholders. What came out was that stakeholders include millennials, it includes the workforce, it includes diversity, and we will talk about that as well. And from a Deloitte study, it said improving society was one of the key purposes that millennials thought that companies should focus on. We are seeing this transition take place. When we look at the IIRC, when we look at the different capitals, when we see about marrying them together, it is arriving at fundamentally the communication around how you go about these activities and how socially responsible corporates are. When I look at it from an example, and this is within Deloitte, it's not, we have a purpose, and Deloitte's purpose is making an impact that matters. We've adopted this a few years ago. It is the reason why everyone comes to Deloitte to work. And it's not just left as a motherhood statement. It is then carved out in terms of 5 shared values, which we believe as an organization, if we embrace all of us, we will do what is required to create the environment to make that impact that matters, which is why we came to work. And they are: lead the way, which is building a better and stronger and more sustainable for our next generation. Serving with integrity, really top right-hand corner, doing the right thing all the time. Taking care of each other, and that is in some way being relatively inclusive. Foster the larger inclusion wave, knowing that it furthers the business purpose. And finally, collaborate for measurable impact. This includes the wider collaboration with society at large, including regulators. Moving further, in February of this year, Deloitte adopted what we call world class. It was a Deloitte initiative to make an impact for 50 million people around the world, of which 10 million are identified to be in India, women and children, to enable them to get jobs and make a positive change in their learning methodologies and provide an outcome which will provide for a better future to those who need it most. So we don't come to work because we have only a business or a service line to serve. We don't come to work because the objective's got to be the end line that we got to make a lot of profit. We don't come to work because we believe that our aim is not just that, but it is to make the larger impact that matters. This purpose enables us to integrate and think alike and move out whatever our individual skills are to be able to make that difference. Considering this is a purpose, one of the other important things that we focus on, and which I think is very important for industry generally, is the concept of all in. We've used the word diversity. All in is wider. It covers race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, age, socioeconomic status. The most important part of this, and I think where businesses need to look up to more, is really focusing on the age part of the all-in strategy. Fundamentally, today's consumers, today's employees are all of different generations, and we have met them, we have felt them, we've understood them. And what really has happened across this process is that the difference between the aspirations of the millennial and purposes or maybe goals of organizations are actually working at divergent processes. They are our tomorrow, and managing that is absolutely critical. Fundamentally, we've realized, and through a study, that today's employees, the new generation, the millennials, the Gen Y, the Gen Z that we look at, actually work in companies where they believe that their own purpose is being fulfilled by that of their organization. That's what builds the tenuous relationship, which can actually snap pretty quickly if we are not right and keep on the right track. Of course, there are many studies which say that inclusive teams outperform peers. Gender diverse companies are likely to outperform peers, including, and then ethically diverse companies do it even better. And fundamentally, although we have regulation that keeps coming in, the adoption of the regulation and spirit will cause statistically outperforming companies to rise to the fore. Having focused on this, I'm going to touch on a few very simple parts